Hey, what's up, everyone? My name's Lionel, and I'm your host for LT Productions. You are watching I Watch You Watch. We are covering The Hunting Wives, Season 1, Episode 7. I appreciate everyone for coming to my channel. Please like this video. Please also subscribe if you are new, and leave your comments below. Now let's get into this episode. So as promised, I'm delivering Episode 7 and 8. I'm going to see if I can fit it on one video, but we'll know towards the end on how this is going to go. All right, so we begin this episode with Jill, 18 years ago. We see that she's giving birth to Brad. Now, things that I noticed is that Pastor Clint isn't in the room. I would love to know what was going on. Is Clint Brad's child? Anyways, she is, after the child is born, she's already just in love with him. They're asking, did you want to breastfeed your baby? She was like, oh no, we're going to just have formula, She feels like that is gross, and she's never really had a mouth there. These Southern Christian girls. So, anyways, the nurse said, you can give it a try. So she tries, and Brad latches on quickly. I said, oh. And she's excited, but then when you look at her, it's just like she was, in a way, getting off on it. I don't know. It just looked weird at how she could have just been excited that this is actually happening, and she didn't know what this feeling was going to be. It just looked a little bit creepy to me, but I'm not a mother. I can't breastfeed, so it's hard for me to judge. All right, so back in a present time, Sophie and Margot, they're talking about Jill, and Margot thinks that Sophie needs to go to the cops. And Sophie was like, well, I really can't go in. I don't have any proof. And if I go in there sounding crazy, I will never get to see my son. Margot went on to confess that she played a recording to Johnny because he knows that Johnny has an itch for her and all that good stuff. So then Sophie goes off again, and Margot was like, look, I effed up, yeah. I made a mistake, but I'm back. Really? I don't understand, Sophie. What's not clicking for you? You've been totally loyal with this heifer. And you're learning that she has betrayed you time and time and time and time and time and time again. What's not clicking? Listen, Linda. Oh my God. So they start kissing, and Jeb comes home, and she's like, oh, you gotta get up out of here. You can't be up. Jeb can't find you because, hey, he thinks you're weird anyways, and is probably going to destroy his campaign, considering what's against her. So Sophie leaves. This scene right here. Johnny and his wife, they are intimate. They're having sex, and it's quite verbal. But guess who's doing the poking? Callie. I said, Lord. Lord. So as they're being very verbal, Callie is telling Johnny, who's the boss? Who's the boss? Johnny says, I'm the boss. You gonna catch the killer? Yes, catch it. Oh. Absolutely done. Johnny catch the killer. I said, y'all sitting up here having cop and robber games, I guess. I don't know. Anyways. After sex and in the afterglow, Callie pushes for Johnny to arrest Sophie and lock her up. And this is going to help him as far as election year going up, and this is also going to help Jed for his campaign. So the next scene is Johnny right now is wearing the pants in the office, and we really let down Kaylee or Casey, whatever her name is, but we are not going to let down Abby. So we're going to make another search to the woods because there's got to be something missing. So another officer asks the deputy. The deputy is the one that that Johnny and him got something going on. He asks, what's up his ASS? And then the deputy said, I don't know, but I like it. I said, Lord Jesus, what's going on in that room? Anyways, we move on to Sophie and Star. Star gives her hypothesis on what she thinks has happened. Sophie tells Star regarding the Abby's heaven baby, and think that that was motive for Brad to do something or Jill to do something to to the child. She was like, I was going to be a grandmother. She lit up about that, but she also frowned on the part about the boarding. I'll say it that way for YouTube's sake. And she got very offensive with Sophie because, of course, Texas is this pro-life. Like, they're staunch on that. So, yeah, it wasn't a good look. At that point, they separated, and from the episodes I saw, they don't really talk again after that. Margot goes over to Brad, and now she's putting thoughts into Brad's mind about Jill. You know, was Jill home that night of Abby's, you know? He's like, I don't know. I can check to see if there was something going on, if there was anything with photos. And she was like, photos, check that out to see where she was, da-da-da-da-da. Brad tries to get into Jill's phone, into her laptop, but he doesn't know the passcodes. He goes to the car and looks at the GPS. He finds that everything's been deleted. There's no recent trips. He is texting Margot to say, hey, da-da-da-da-da-da. Jill suddenly appears and saying, what are you doing in the car? I'm going to Sonic's. I'll come with. Even though she's looking very crazy, like, does she know what's up? Or whatever. So she was like, well, why do you need a map to go to Sonic's? He said, well, I forgot which turn I need to go. And then she looks at him, and he thinks, oh, she done figured it out. She was like, well, you just can't do nothing without me. I said, Lord Jesus. Sophie and Margot, they meet back up, and they touch bases. Sophie tells her about Star, and Margot about the GPS. Margot tells Sophie about it. So this is at the hotel. They were in the middle of wanting to have sex again. They start. Sophie stops. She said, look, my life is a mess. I'm having an affair on my husband. I still love Graham, but I want to be with you. Well, you know, Margot was very understanding and all that good stuff, but as soon as I fix my life, I'll be back. Sophie. All right, so Salazar has been going through Pete's trash. She wasn't really finding anything. Then Louisiana calls, and she asked about Pete. Whomever was talking, they said, I never want to hear that name again. Next thing you know, at Pete's home, he's dragging this blue bag and is forcing it into his car. All of a sudden, Detective Salazar did approach his vehicle, knocks on the window, he rolls it down, da-da-da-da-da. She said that she has some questions about Abby. You were close, right? No, I barely knew her, da-da-da-da-da. Pete ends up calling out her name, and the detective said, have we met? He's like, no, I've seen you all over the news with that other case and all that good stuff. Blah, 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 blah. Well, you said that you never met, or you didn't have that much of a relationship with Abby, but Abby called you the night that she was gone on to see the Lord. He said he really can't explain that, da-da-da-da-da. Have you been drinking? Salazar says, or asked. He said, well, this is at 11 o'clock in the morning, so of course I wouldn't be drinking at this time in the morning. So then Salazar asked for the license and registration, and as he's reaching into his glove compartment, Salazar sees the cinnamon gun, and then clicks that this is the same person that shot her all those months ago. The vodka and cinnamon gun, that whole smell. So the next thing you know, she says, I need you to step out of the vehicle. And he said, no problem. And then he skeets on. Salazar calls Flynn, says, I need backup, da-da-da-da-da. I believe I know who pow-powed Abby. Of course, there's on and off. He can't really hear everything that she's saying because they are in the woods. However, he goes and tracks her and sees that they're on whatever road. So then the police, they come and were able to block Pete in. They order Pete to get out of the car. He gets out, but has a pow-pow in his hand. So Flynn is ordered, at least by Salazar, don't shoot, da-da-da-da-da. And Salazar tries to talk to him. So what did you do to Casey? He's sitting there frantic and crying and all that good stuff. He doesn't answer them. He ended up using the gun to. I said, look at the turn of events. So right after that, Salazar is hearing all this banging in the storage unit that he's got. He's got a little travel thing that he hooked onto the end of his truck. He's hearing all this banging, and then they open it, and guess who they find? Nina. But there's more. They find Casey. Casey was not dead. I said, my God, he had her all this time. So Salazar was not crazy that whole time. Man, wow. Wow. Whew. Sophie calls Graham to try to check in. And he's asking how she's doing, like, I'm not with you. That's all there is. So what are we talking about here? She wants to see Jack. And he says, I don't know. Why? I need to protect him. Protect him from his own mother? That's kind of crazy. But Sophie's like, look, can I please have some support out of this whole situation? I'm doing everything I can on my end. Graham asks, do you know who did Pow Pow Abby? Or do you think you know? And she says, yeah. Well, go to the police and tell them who you think it is, and I'll get a lawyer for you. I said, wow, you threw her a bone. It's like, I get it, Graham, but at the same time, to me, it's kind of a wrong move in this situation. Come on. At the hospital, Nina, she's kind of just down on herself. She feels like she's an idiot and all that good stuff. Salazar was just asking, about this connection with Abby. What can you say with Pete and Abby? Nina thinks that Pete has some type of crush on Abby, but I don't think it went anywhere. I don't know what happened, but it was just this weird thing of him knowing about our type of sexual sins, and then he's getting fixated and all that good stuff off of that. Like he was getting horny off of that. I was like, ooh, that's quite crazy. Like the pastor in him is to condemn them, which condemning is not it's a biblical word. It's not God's way. He convicts, not condemns. But also, he likes that they are that way. It's quite weird. It feels like if he chastises them, it's not so bad that he actually desires them after knowing how they get around. Crazy. Salazar says, look, it's not your fault. That man was sick, and then I think she hugs her or whatever. There's a press conference hosted by Johnny, and he says who the real heroes in this town are, and it is Salazar and Flint. Somebody from press is asking, is all of this related with the whole Abby situation? And Johnny said, no, it's not connected at all. He soon ends the conference, and then Salazar is like, what the F? Not for real, but I'm saying that because you would not say that to your superior. How is this connected at all? How is it not connected? He had motive and all that. Look what he did to the other girls. And Johnny says, look, Pete was in Southfield. And she said, I didn't know that was going on. He was caught pleasuring himself in his car. So he didn't have time, and he did not off Abby. He did hand Salazar her reinstatement papers, and he tweaked the return date so it doesn't look like an off-duty cop handled all of this with Pete and all that good stuff. All right, Sophie, she's at the hotel. She gets a text from Graham. Oh, wait a minute. So she was like, well, where is this going to? Do you have any other leads right now? And Johnny said, we have our prime suspect, and we're going to go there now. And Ledoux, who is the deputy, comes in and gives her the paperwork so that they have proof and all this good stuff, and they go and visit whomever the prime suspect is. So again, where Sophie is, she gets a text from Graham saying that he got a lawyer, Calvin Kirkland, and he's highly recommended, and told her to be at the station, or he'll be at the station, or you be at the station in 10 minutes. There's a knock on the door, and it's Johnny and Ledoux. And they come to pick up Sophie because there's not a shadow of doubt that Sophie is the one that did what she did to Abby. She's questioned again, now with her new lawyer, Calvin, and again, he's asking the same questions, and she's saying that no, I did not do anything to Abby. I would never have done that. I never even met her. And next thing you know, he pulls out his laptop and says, hunting is very serious down here in Texas, da 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 da. And what happens there is that there are trail cameras as far as in the woods when they are hunting different things. The trail cameras show that Sophie was there in the woods with Abby, and you see them actually talking about whatever's going on. I said, Lord Jesus. And she's still saying, I don't have an answer. I wouldn't do it. I know I wouldn't do it. Da, 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 da. And next thing you know, they arrest her. I said, Lord Jesus. So whatever happened that night, Sophie was involved in some type of way. But how? And Salazar was like, because she was in there in the waiting room. So everybody's just getting up like, we just done solved this case. And Flynn, so do you believe this? And then Flynn gonna say, what do I know? I don't know. Everybody's just baffled and just going with the flow because of that evidence. It's so crazy. But Salazar is just really on it that something else is going on. All right. Next thing you know, Star, she's going into Abby's closet and she's just touching some of the clothes as she's just remembering her daughter. And then she sees under one of her cheerleader uniforms this sexy lingerie. That pisses her off. And she goes to Jamie's work and says, hey, were Brad and Abby having sex? He's not really answering anything. Did he get her pregnant? He's like, look, Abby loved Brad. He cheated on her. But he didn't treat her right, but he took her for granted, but I don't think that he killed her. Did he get her pregnant? Da, 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 da. Yeah. So he said, I don't think that he killed her. And then Star says, I think I know who did. And they're going to pay for it. At Coyote Joe's, the crew, meaning Margot, Taylor, Monet, and Callie, they meet up. Taylor's riding the mechanical bull around or whatever and just having a good old time. So they sit down and discuss everything that's going on between Sophie and then also with the Pastor Pete dude. Of course, Callie's just excited that that Texas got their justice and Sophie's in jail, da 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 da. And that's one of the people I'm like, did you do it? Because you are quite, how I want to say it, you're quite elevated on making sure that Sophie goes behind bars. But Margot still was feeling off about this whole situation. They're like, well, what's going on? She's just wondering, like, what's going on with Jill? Jill's not even here. And the group agreed that something is off about Jill. And they said, well, maybe she's hiding something. Well, maybe we should go question her. And she said, well, maybe not all of us should go question her. Maybe a couple of us. So then Callie said, you and me, Margot, let's go question her. And Margot said, okay. Next thing you know, we see that Star has pulled up in Jill and Clint's driveway. She goes to the back into her trunk and she grabs her rifle, heading towards the door. Callie and Margot, they come and knock on the door, da 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 da. Jill opens up and they were like, hey, how are you? Haven't seen you in a while. She said that she caught a bug. And but she's feeling all right now. And they said, okay, good. Party at Jill's. Then they want to come in. Margot asks for something or whatnot, and Jill's trying to block the kitchen. Like, let's go in the kitchen and get this da-da-da-da for wine or something like that. And she's like, oh no, my kitchen is nasty. I sent the help home when I started getting sick. I didn't want them to get sick, da-da-da-da-da. She said, no problem. I've been in your kitchen before. Margot said it, so let me just go in this kitchen. What are you hiding? So they go in there, and guess what? Star is laying on the ground in a pool of blood. And they're like, what the F is going on? And she said, I had no choice. She came in here with her rifle and she was saying all these crazy things about me, and I had to protect myself. So they were like, okay, well, so let's call Johnny. No, don't call Johnny. They're like, what are you talking about? We're friends. We help each other out. And then she goes and pulls out her handgun and points it at them. And she says, for once in your life, Margot, could you please shut the up? Let me think. Margot was like, look, you can think or whatnot, just put down the gun. She wasn't putting down the gun, so Callie went on and shot her. And shot her like 3 times. And before she fell back, she fell to the ground. But before she fell all the way back, she said, "Cunts." Oh my God. I think that was it. Yeah, that was the end of the episode. But I was just over it. I was done. Not over it in the sense like, but it was just like, oh my God. So you see everything that's happened in this episode, it was high activity. First Pete, they thought it was him that did that to Abby. Now, they're thinking it's Jill, and now we're finding out that there is undiscovered footage of Sophie and Abby. My God. So who did it? I will tell you in the next episode if you have not watched it. But I do know who did it. Even though how they set it up, there were so many people with so many motives, and no one was really checking off of the list as someone who wasn't a suspect. I love how the writer, Miss May Gold, did this thing. You did a good thing, Miss May. So, yeah. So come back. I'll be right back with episode 8, and we can conclude season 1. And I'll just tell you my thoughts on everything. But until then, like this video, subscribe, leave your comments, and peace.